This is perhaps the most curious nation among all Portuguese-speaking countries. It has a picture-perfect coastline, but thousands of people who live just a few meters from the sea have never set foot in the water. The Portuguese spoken there resembles that of Portugal, but television is dominated by Brazilian soap operas. And what about traditions? If I told you that in some communities, newborn babies start life drinking dog's milk, would you believe me? Well, it's true. All of this exists, and it's in Angola. Today, Belo Mundo takes you to one of the most surprising countries in Africa, full of rituals, beliefs, and curiosities you've never heard of. Number 1. Location and general information. Angola is located on the west coast of Africa, facing the Atlantic and surrounded by Namibia, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's the kind of country that seems to have been put together from pieces of very different places, but somehow they work together. On the coast, the climate is humid, the greenery is intense, and life seems to happen at a faster pace. But just take the road inland and everything changes. The vegetation begins to thin out, the land becomes drier, and soon the scenery changes. Suddenly, you are facing the Namib Desert, one of the oldest in the world. A place with reddish dunes, ancient rock formations, and a landscape that has nothing to do with what you would expect from tropical Africa. But the most curious thing is that, not far from there, the green returns with a vengeance. There are areas of dense rainforest, wide rivers, and isolated villages in the middle of the bush. In the center of the country, the altitude rises, the air becomes cooler, and large plateaus appear that seem to have no end. And then there are the scenes that look like something out of a movie. The black stones of Pungo and Dongo, for example, are giant blocks of stone that rise up in the middle of nowhere. Further south, the waterfalls of the Huila region create a contrast of stone, water, and mist that impresses anyone. Few countries can combine forest, savanna, desert, mountains, and coastline in a single territory. And even with all this diversity, Angola has its own identity, with regions that seem like different worlds but are part of the same history. And to understand this history, we need to go back in time, because before talking about traditions, rituals, and customs, we need to understand how it all began. Number 2. History. The history here does not begin with borders, documents, or flags. It begins much earlier when different peoples already lived, scattered among forests, rivers, and savannas. First came the Khoisan, nomadic hunters who knew every corner of the land. Then came the Bantu, bringing agriculture, metallurgy, and the basis of many of the languages and traditions that still exist here. It was from this mixture that the first great kingdoms emerged, and among them one stood out, the Kingdom of Congo, an empire with nobility, alliances, trade, and internal disputes that influenced everything around it, occupying an area that today spans 3 different countries. At the end of the 15th century, the coast began to receive visitors who would change everything. The Portuguese arrived first as traders, but soon became colonizers. And what came next is a wound that remains open to this day. For centuries, this territory became a starting point for human trafficking to Brazil. Cities such as Salvador and Rio de Janeiro received ships that departed from here, carrying lives, cultures, and stories. This scar crossed the ocean. It appears in the language, in the flavors of the food, in the rhythms and customs that connect the 2 sides of the Atlantic. Colonization lasted almost 500 years, and when independence finally arrived in 1975, the relief was short-lived. In place of foreign rule came a long, violent civil war, directly influenced by the Cold War. Millions of people were forced to leave their homes, plantations were abandoned, cities were destroyed, and the ground was littered with landmines. Peace only began to take hold in the 2000s. But rebuilding goes beyond constructing buildings or roads. It is also necessary to rebuild the way of living in society, of governing, of trusting. And that is precisely where the most difficult challenges arise. Number 3. Democracy only on paper. On paper, the country is a democratic republic, with elections, freedom of expression, and everything else expected of a modern state. But in practice, this is not quite the case. The same party has been in power since independence, and those who criticize the government too much often run into problems. For almost 40 years, the country was ruled by the same person, and even with the change of president in recent years, little has changed. The party continues to control everything, and the opposition is under siege. Elections exist, but they are marked by allegations, suspicions, and an environment in which trust is always low. The press faces indirect censorship, and protests are met with repression. Speaking ill of the government in public is risky. Journalists have been arrested, activists have disappeared, and many people, even without having experienced any of this, prefer to avoid the subject. So, on the one hand, you have the discourse of a democratic state and the rule of law. On the other, a daily life in which everyone knows that criticizing those in power too much can cause headaches. Now that you know a little about the history, it helps to understand our next curiosity. Because it is precisely at the intersection of the past and the present that many of the rituals, beliefs, and customs that make Angola so unique arise. Number 4. Population, ethnic groups, languages, and beliefs. With a population of over 30 million, this is one of those countries where each region has an accent, a rhythm, and a way of life that seems to come from completely different worlds. There are more than 40 ethnic groups, each with its own history, rituals, and even languages. A large part of the population lives on the coast or near the capital, but just take the road inland and the scenery changes. There are big cities, mud villages, isolated farms, and hamlets where people still speak the same language as their ancestors. In this mix, what you hear is a salad of languages. Portuguese is the official language, but it is not the Portuguese we are used to in Brazil or Portugal. It is Angolan Portuguese, a unique version that mixes words from European Portuguese with expressions from local languages such as Kimbundu, Umbundu, and Kikongo. On the street, at school, or at home, it is normal for someone to switch between 2 or even 3 languages in the same conversation. This same mix appears in religion. There are crowded evangelical churches, Catholic masses with lines at the door, and at the same time there are traditional ceremonies performed with leaves, dances, and invocations of ancestors. Here, modern religion and ancestral spirituality go hand in hand. There are families who pray with the Bible in the morning and in the afternoon consult the Soba or the community healer. Number 5. Rituals, customs, and spiritual practices. When we calmly observe everyday life, we can see that much here still follows very ancient traditions. Nothing is done by chance. Each ritual has a purpose and meaning that has been passed down from generation to generation. One of the best known is spiritual cleansing. This custom appears in various regions of the country and follows a simple logic. Before an important change, such as a wedding or the beginning of a new cycle, the person takes a bath prepared with fragrant herbs, macerated leaves, or infusions made by the elders of the community. In some places, popped popcorn is even used. The noise and mess it makes represent everything that needs to be left behind. The idea is to enter the new phase with a clear head and a protected body. But initiation rites are what most mark people's lives. They indicate that the child is no longer a child. Among the peoples of the east of the country, such as the Chokwe, this is taken very seriously. Boys spend weeks away from home learning about responsibility, coexistence, and tradition. When they return to the village, they are accompanied by songs and dances and receive a new name. This name represents a new phase of life, and only those who are part of the group fully understand what it means. In the center of the country, among communities of Ovimbundu origin, the process is similar, but with a greater focus on work, marriage, and behavior within the family. And there is a tradition that usually leaves any foreigner speechless. In some communities in the northern province of Uige, newborn babies are given a little dog's milk in the first days of life. For those born in the city, this may sound strange, but here it is an ancient ritual of protection. It is believed that this helps the child grow up healthy and prevents speech or hearing problems. Those who participate in this custom do so with seriousness and respect because they believe they are protecting the baby. Amidst all this, there is always music. The drum sets the rhythm, the dance accompanies every movement, and spirituality appears as a natural part of everyday life. There is no separation between spiritual life and practical life. People ask for protection, seek guidance, resolve conflicts, and give thanks using rituals that have existed for a long time. Number 6. Legends. Not everything in Angola can be explained by history books or official documents. There is a more mysterious side where oral tradition, myths, and popular beliefs shape the way people understand the world. Among the many legends that circulate throughout the country, one of the best known is that of Jacare Bangon, a creature that has become a symbol of resistance and justice. According to legend, this alligator lived on the banks of the Dande River during the colonial era, when the people suffered from a cruel tax called the General Minimum Tax. The tax was collected by local authorities who aggressively exploited the population. Bango was a huge, fierce alligator, already famous in the region. One day, tired of seeing injustice, he reportedly left the river with a pile of money in his mouth, enough to pay everyone's taxes. He marched to the tax office and, with his presence alone, sent the Portuguese officials running. The money stayed there. He returned to the river. This version is the best known, but there are variations. In some versions, the animal was sent by a sorcerer. In others, he was a man transformed by magic. The fact is that Jacare Bangon became a legendary hero. Today, there is even a statue of him in the province of Bengo, with people around him, as if they were cheering the animal. No one knows when this story began, but what matters is its meaning. Number 7. Cuisine, daily life, and social habits. If there is a good way to understand the soul of a country, it is by looking at everyday life. It is in the noise of the street, in the way people greet each other, in what goes into the pot for Wednesday lunch. And Angola is no different. Each region has its own rhythm, its own way of doing things, its own improvisation, and some details catch your attention right away. In many countries, for example, the profession of manicurist is seen as a woman's job. But here it's different. Men working as manicurists and pedicurists is common and respected. They are in salons, at fairs, on sidewalks, and no one finds it strange. It's just another job like any other. Another example is the way of locating oneself. The postal code system is a recent innovation. For a long time, and still today in much of the country, the logic is different. People orient themselves by visual references, such as after the big curve, near the gas station, on the street with the blue house. It may seem confusing to outsiders, but for those who live there, it works better than any map. And in the midst of this daily life, there is a curious link with Brazil. Brazilian soap operas are part of the popular Angolan imagination. Many people grew up following stories from Rio and São Paulo, picked up accents, memorized slang, and brought these customs into their daily lives. Brazilians even end up with nicknames here. They are called zucas, an affectionate nickname that shows that, despite the distance, there is identification. Now, perhaps the most direct way to feel all this is through food. Fongje is found in practically every home. It is made with cassava or corn flour mixed with hot water until it becomes a firm dough, similar to a thicker puree. It is cheap, filling, and goes well with almost everything. It goes with fish, chicken, meat, okra, or whatever you have. Moufette is a coastal dish, roasted fish with plantains, sweet potatoes, and beans in palm oil. It smells like a morning at the beach, burning coals, and boats arriving with the day's catch. In the countryside, galinha fiote is a tradition, a young chicken prepared with strong spices, cooked until it falls apart. It is a special occasion food, served to those who deserve respect. And when the heat is on, muca juice comes into play. A juice made from the fruit of the baobab tree, with a sour taste, full-bodied texture, and flavor that cannot be compared to anything known outside of there. But not everyone has easy access to it. In Luanda, prices are high, traffic is chaotic, and time is short. Many people live on a tight budget, and most of their meals come from the street, bought in lunch boxes served by women who cook on the sidewalk, on makeshift stoves, feeding those who have spent the whole day struggling and have only a few coins in their pockets. Number 8. Economy, contrasts, and life in the cities. The best way to understand this place is to observe the distance between what exists on paper and what actually reaches the people. On the map, it appears to be a country full of oil, diamonds, and valuable minerals. But that does not mean that the population's life keeps up with all this glitz. That is where the contrasts begin to appear. The currency is the kwanza, named after one of the great rivers in the region. And you only need to travel between the capital and the interior to realize how its value changes from day to day. There are places where your salary is enough to pay the bills and keep the fridge full for the whole month. There are places where it disappears after the first shopping cart at the market. Luanda, the capital, is perhaps the greatest symbol of this contrast. It appears on lists of the most expensive cities in the world. Rents are on par with European cities, supermarkets charge as if they were in dollars, and restaurants have prices from another planet. But around these modern buildings, there are neighborhoods with dirt floors, unpaved streets, and makeshift houses. And there, most people live in the informal sector. And it is because of this inequality that an almost unbelievable curiosity arises. Even with the extensive coastline and the sea always nearby, there are people who were born and raised seeing the ocean without ever having set foot in it. This is because many beaches are polluted, full of trash and sewage. The clean ones are far away with difficult and expensive access. In the end, the sea is there, but only for those who can afford it. Even so, the city never stops. The street markets are open from dawn until nightfall. There are those who sell fruit, those who prepare lunch boxes on the sidewalk, those who work 3 jobs, those who repair engines in their own backyards. Creativity becomes a tool for survival. On the one hand, there is the wealth that sustains the economy. On the other, there are millions of people living at a completely different pace. This is the real Angola, the one that faces difficulties but continues to function as best it can. And that's it for today. So, which of these curiosities surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, leave your like and subscribe here at Bello Mundo. See you at the next destination.